Welcome everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Cerebral Cricketer podcast. So I figured that for episode 2, every episode that I do with a guest, I want to try to do another episode as like a follow-up from that episode with the guest, in order to share my reflections and thoughts about the particular guest. So in this case, the last episode that I released, which is basically the first official episode of the Cerebral Cricketer podcast, was with Musa Nadeem Ahmad, who's played for Netherlands, top order batsman, left-handed batsman, and I think that conversation was wonderful. And I think there's obviously conversations we can have with the guests as I'm interviewing them, but I think afterwards, when I do listen back through the podcast, and I have these other thoughts that come along with it. Sometimes I have a lot of points that I wish I asked, or more questions that I asked the guests that I may have missed out. But then, I sort of reflect more on the things they said and how they said it, and sort of, learn from it and understand more about, who they are as a person and a cricketer, and what allows them to do the best they can and allow them the best opportunity for success. So I think in Musa's case, there's a lot of interesting points and thoughts that he really shared when it comes to doing well at a high level, especially when it comes to cricket, right? So and I'm excited for the next episode after this as well, because it's with his brother Cerebral Ahmad, which I'm doing the editing and will release soon as well. So I think both brothers, having both brothers on the show as the first 2 guests of the podcast is something very special as well. And both of them have been wonderful and amazing. Offline, the way they've interacted with me, it's just been really pleasant and wonderful. Really, nice people, and I'm so thankful that they took their time in order to come on the show. So when it comes to Musa, I think when it comes to many cricketers, the biggest advantage you can have is having a parent, or in this case his father, who has played cricket and who's played a lot of cricket. I think at one point Musa said that his father was the coach or the captain of their club cricket team, and that is obviously advantageous, right? Like when you have someone in your family, a parent that takes you to cricket, trains you and coaches you as well from a younger age, right? To be fair, Musa said that he got into cricket, I think it was around 14, 15 years old. But in saying that, you still have someone there that can guide you through the roads, as opposed to someone, a parent that doesn't encourage you to play cricket. Obviously, it can be a lot more harder at times, and a little bit more challenging, right? So I think naturally that is advantageous when it comes to developing as a cricketer from a younger age. And one thing that really struck with me, he said that his dad would teach him how to to be fearless, and that's a very good approach when it comes to teaching your son, for example, at a younger age, right? Like teaching them to be fearless and aggressive as much as possible. That sort of allows them to be themselves, right? Sometimes I find that there is a lot of over coaching that happens, like technique wise, and a lot of fixation on technique, which is obviously there's a time and place for that, but it sort of takes away from that aggression or that fearless mindset. Instead, maybe the over coaching may restrict certain players and might even dent their confidence, right? So I think that was really interesting as well when it comes to his mental approach, and his dad teaching him to be fearless. And yeah, I think from there that on top of that, he mentioned that he never played youth cricket. He went straight into, I think it was senior cricket, and that's a huge leg up, right? I feel that if you're playing with the big boys from a young age, you naturally have to adapt quicker. You have to show that fearless mindset from an even younger age, because you're playing, against people a lot older than you who are obviously a lot more polished and skilled, right? And you have to try to upskill in order to match their abilities. So I think, being fast tracked and playing with senior cricket with older guys is definitely a way to improve at a much quicker rate, right? So I think all these ingredients definitely helped when it comes to Musa's development and him playing international cricket. I think that's very advantageous, having all these key ingredients, like having father figure that's very much supporting your cricket career, coupled with that kind of fearless mindset, coupled with having to mature faster from a cricketing standpoint, because you're playing against much older cricketers. And I'm sure when you're playing with much older cricketers, you have to mature as a cricketer. You have to upskill. You have to read the game more. Obviously the quality of cricket will be a lot harder, and the tough cricket, right? And so as a youngster, you're sort of forced to navigate those sort of things, which I think will put youngsters at a much better stead going forward within or journeying into throughout the cricket career. So what I found really interesting as well, I'm just going through the show notes now. He said that he talked about the club cricket experience in Perth, Australia, which was a bit more when it comes to, I guess, Australian cricket and grade cricket here and club cricket here. Sledging is part of the culture, and so him encountering that and being challenged in that situation, that is obviously a lot more different to maybe the type of cricket he was playing back home. So I think naturally he adjusted and sort of overcame that situation when it comes to a different brand of cricket being played, right? And I think naturally as cricketers, or top level cricketers, there's always challenges that you face when it comes to different experiences you might not be used to, and sort of having to navigate that. And if I recall, he said that he sort of implied that he likes to stay in his bubble, and so he found his way, right? Like, I think as cricketers and batsmen, you have to find what you're most comfortable in, the style of cricket you like to play, from a psychological standpoint, knowing what keeps you ticking, right? Like, some people it might be mentally exhausting for them to be engaging with the players or the opposition if they were sledging, right? That can be maybe a bit more exhausting for some players. I know Shane Watson talks about how he would give it back to the opposition, and that helps him stay focused and stay fired up, right? So every cricketer is different. It's about finding what gels with you and your personality, right? I think, for example, I'm sure Hashim Amla would be in his shell and sort of stay laser focused, right? So it just depends on how you are and temperamentally what you incline towards, and sort of figuring that out. For example, if you're a bit more extroverted, right? And sometimes with extroversion, a lot of players might get distracted too much. And so you just have to be wary about your, blind spots or your potential ways of being exploited, right? So I know, for example, a lot of the players would try and not engage with Virat Kohli at all, right? And that's for him to not be fired up too much, because people talk about even Kevin Peterson, like if you fire them up too much, then they'll play their best, right? If you sort of don't engage with them, then they might not have a reason to be fired up, and therefore may not perform at their best, right? You don't want to allow for them to be or give them any room to be even more determined to do well, right? Or give them a goal and fire them up, so that might work against you. So yeah, it sort of depends on the sort of cricketer you are. And in this case, Musa talked about how he'd sort of be in his bubble, and his general demeanor, which was really impressive, is that he just had this very laid back approach, like especially offline, online, just generally chill, take it easy, take it one ball at a time kind of mindset. Doesn't think too far ahead. I think these are very admirable traits and qualities to have, right? Sometimes we fixate on too much about what's going to happen in the future and get anxious and all dwell on, past performances. Maybe they didn't go our way, maybe they did go our way, right? I think, the best thing is to always just be present. You obviously can't control, your results. You can't always control your outcomes in the way that you want, right? So you can't be too phased. Like, you always have to have that belief in your skills, irrespective of the outcome, right? Because unfortunately, cricket is that kind of game, right? Like, there's so many variables, right? Like, the umpire gives you a bad decision, or maybe, it's raining or whatever, the conditions might not suit you, and maybe the grass isn't, cut properly, and therefore will restrict your scoring options. Like, there's so many variables, right? Or like, you get an unlucky run out, all this sort of stuff, right? So you can't be too fixated on the final result or the final outcome, right? You just have to, I think even Bumrah talked about it, right? Bumrah talked about something along the lines of sometimes he bowls his best, but the figures don't reflect that. His bowling figures don't reflect that. But then sometimes he bowls really poorly, or he might bowl poorly, and he might end up with good figures as well, right? So yeah, cricket's a fickle game like that, right? And similarly for batting, like, you can be in top form and all it takes is just one good ball and you're out, right? And Adam Gilchrist mentions this as well. Like, he said that if you're in good form, it means that you have to be extra focused, right? Like, you want to make use of that form as much as possible. So you want to be extra laser focused, right? So you can't really, take it for granted. So yeah, that's my sort of ramblings from it. When Musa was talking about, encountering, sledging, right? And also, I really, really enjoyed the part when he talked about how he scored 61 runs against South Africa and facing world-class bowlers, and he talked about Nokia, right? I thought that was a really, really, really good point, and he shared some really good insights when it comes to facing Nokia. Like, what was really interesting, he said that he hasn't faced that kind of fast bowling in his life, 150 plus Ks per hour. So I guess a lot of people may assume, like, these batsmen, top level batsmen, might always be facing that kind of pace in the nets. But I guess realistically, like, how many times do you get to face that level of pace? Like, it doesn't happen all the time, right? Like, there's only a handful of 150 kilometer an hour bowlers within international cricket, so it wouldn't make sense to be facing 150 clicks all the time, right? Even though it gets talked about a lot. Like, people talk about, how do you, the voice gets a little nervous talking about 150 kilometers an hour bowlers, because it can be difficult to play them, or it might mentally scar some batsmen, right? But in this case, like, realistically, it doesn't make sense to face that kind of bowling time. Like, normally I'd say on TV you see like bowlers around the 135 to 140 kilometers an hour mark. So I assume, like, for the most part, most batsmen, especially top level batsmen, are facing that pace rather than just facing 150 kilometers an hour. So anywho, like, Musa talks about that particular experience, like, the ball's going through faster, and he hasn't faced that kind of pace before. And he said he found a way, and that time he couldn't necessarily play the pull shot because he's never sort of done it at that sort of pace. And by saying that, he said he was a bit more defensive to Nokia, which I assume for most parts a lot of most batsmen would do, especially when it's their first time playing Nokia, and sort of maybe targeting other bowlers. So he found a template that day that allowed him to really succeed. So I thought that was very admirable. He trusted his game. He emphasized, like, finding a way on the day. I think that sort of speaks to fearlessness and a resilience that batsman or any cricketer needs to be able to succeed. Like, you're going to be thrown into challenges that you've never maybe encountered before, right? Like there's only so much you can do in the nets, right? There's only so much you can train in the nets, and some maybe unorthodox bowlers or different kind of bowlers you might come up against in the game, they may not necessarily have faced prior to that, and obviously that will pose a different challenge. And sometimes you just have to like improvise and think of a way to get out of that situation, or sort of take that challenge head on and figure out a way, right? In this case, Musa talked about basically being a little bit more defensive to Nokia, but then scoring runs, I guess against the other bowlers as well. So I thought that was a very insightful part of the podcast. We sort of shared those thoughts, and something for me to sort of take on board as well, right? So I'm just going through now. And yeah, like he mentioned in passing about Naseem Shah, how he rates his bowling, swings it both ways, etc. Smart bowler. Meeting Babar Azam, it was really refreshing. I guess like a lot of people, since such cricketers are, in Pakistan are so famous and scrutinized heavily, especially Indian cricket players, right? Like it's almost like the whole life is under surveillance 24/7, right? And people are trying to make out if they're a good person, that bad person, and then if they do something that might come across a certain way, then it gets highlighted even more. With the media, right? Like even the recent example, like Khawaja explained, or had to go into the media to explain that he had an injury and therefore that's why he couldn't play one of the Shield games. Whereas someone from Queensland sort of insinuated that he doesn't want to play. So you're gonna have those situations, right? Unfortunately, in cricket. So it's about Also, it was really refreshing, just to have Musa talk about how nice Babar Azam was, right? And the amount of time that he spent with him and sort of asking questions. And it was really interesting how Musa was talking about, like, I think on a tricky wicket, Babar Azam didn't score as many runs, but ended up scoring, what was it, 90, a runnable 90 or something to that effect. So I thought that was really, interesting that, it seems like obviously Musa has like a curious mind and wants to know what allows certain batsmen to succeed in sort of tricky conditions as well. So, so I think all of those put together in general, or what I gathered, the vibe I felt from Musa is like, wonderful person, chill guy. He sort of takes it one step at a time, like, particularly when it comes to like facing 150 kilometers an hour, or like 120, 130, sort of equates it the same in the sense that, it's about, being fearless. And if you're scared, then obviously your reaction time will be slower and therefore you won't be able to play that kind of bowling. So for him, it's like he's not too phased. And I think that's a really, that's a really good mindset to have, and something that, we should all strive towards, right? Like not being too phased about, certain challenges, sort of taking them head on, trust your skills and backing your abilities, and being mentally tough where, you sort of, don't shy away from a challenge and, encounter the challenge head on, but, take it in an easy manner, right? I thought that like that's what he sort of exhibited a lot throughout the way he explained whether aspects of his life and his sort of cricketing journey. That's essentially, from an overall sense, is what I gathered about him, and I really admire that. I think that's a really good, amazing quality to have, and something for me to take on board to my career. Like, not being too stressing out too much about the results, and trusting a game, and treat each challenge for what it is, and not at the same time maybe not take it like too seriously and take it too hard, but then back your skills, and trust your mental game, and don't be scared, and be fearless. I think that's the essence of the conversation. So all of that put together, I learned so much from that conversation, and it's just really much a privilege to be able to connect with such players and learn from them, and even offline, be able to talk to them. So I appreciate all of it, the time their own time, like especially, you know, during Ramadan period as well. Like I'm recording this now at like, what time is it now? 4 a.m. In the morning. So apologies if I don't, you know, sound on my game right now, but you know, especially with Shariz's brother, younger brother as well, as a leg spinner or all-rounder leg spinner. He also did that during as he was fasting as well, during the month of Ramadan. So, you know, I'm really grateful that they spent their, you know, gave their time to do this interview, and I'm really excited for the next episode as well. With Shariz Ahmed, once it's released, I'll probably do a little recap summary in the manner that I've done right now and today with Musa's episode. So if probably to wrap it up, like if you guys enjoy this content, if you find it beneficial, then, you know, please share it around, put it up on your, you know, Instagram story or tweet about it, or put it up on your Facebook, share with your friends and family. Like I have big plans and visions. I really want to dedicate what I can to, you know, growing this channel and getting more exposure when it comes to getting insights about these cricketers. I think for me, like, I want to interview players in a way where it's more like about, you know, their story in a chronological order, and within that being able to unpack the mental side of the game, how they think about their game and extracting benefit. And you can do that with, you know, many different players. So maybe we'll, you know, once we follow that template with many different cricketers, we'll see a sort of pattern emerging in terms of how they, you know, all do well and do well at a high level, right? And what's the key ingredients in order to be the best version of yourself. Maybe there's a pattern between each, you know, player who's playing, you know, pretty high level cricket, or maybe you'll see each player has things that they do differently that facilitate success. And I guess for the listener, it's about mixing and matching who you feel like you relate to when it comes to, you know, the cricketers. Like maybe a bit of a Katie Williamson, maybe a slightly reserved type character might appeal to you, and so when you listen to someone of that mold, you might relate to them a bit more, and therefore, like, you know, sort of take on board what they say, as opposed to someone that's a bit more, you know, for example, extroverted and might not suit your sort of persona, right? So I think those are little things that are, you know, my objective for the podcast is just to get people thinking in that manner, having those dialogues. And I had like a very long conversation with Shariz, you know, the brother of Musa, about this kind of stuff, and it's very insightful, and just the way they think about things, you know, is definitely something to learn from and take on board onto, you know, our sort of journeys. I'm sure everyone listening plays cricket or, you know, enjoys watching cricket, and something to sort of get a different kind of insight, right? As opposed to what maybe the other podcasts that are out there might not touch on. So that's kind of my objective with it. So yeah, share it around, share the content, you know, give us a like and subscribe as well. So yeah, I'll probably wrap it up here. Thank you for your time. So take care. Peace out.